A new book claims to explode the myth of Africa's dependence on aid. It also addresses capital flight coming out of the continent and whether Africa will ever be debt-free. Lionel Skink caught up with the author. It was on the sidelines of the 6th Annual African Economic Conference on the Green Economy and Structural Transformation held in Addis Ababa under the auspices of the UN Economic Agency for Africa and the African Development Bank.
In this book, we basically look at the phenomenon of external borrowing, the use of foreign loans in Africa for the purpose of development. And unlike what most people believe, that Africa is heavily indebted to the rest of the world, that some people even say that Africa has been draining the resources of the rest of the world in terms of foreign aid, foreign loans. We find that in practice, when you look at the numbers, more money has been leaving the continent, heading out, than coming in the sense that outflows of capital exceed by far the inflows of external borrowing, the inflows of foreign aid.
All right, so essentially you're talking about the second scramble for Africa, and many people are aware of it, but nobody's actually put their head on the block and said, look, this is what's going on, and I'd like to commend you on your bravery. How do they respond to your personal bravery?
I think people are very much encouraged by the fact that we are putting light on what, as you say, most people feel there is something wrong going on in the international financial system, whereby government officials go out and borrow money for the sake of financing development, and a chunk of it ends up in the same banks that lend the money to the government.
So you're talking skullduggery, you're talking about unsustainable growth, and I think it's quite appropriate. I would like to hear your take on how appropriate this book is at this year's AEC 2011 that looks at the green economy and structural transformation along those lines.
I believe that when you talk about green growth, when you talk about structural transformation, you must talk about how you finance that. Now, if Africa cannot keep the money on its soil, there is no way we're going to be able to finance development. Even as we advocate for scaling up aid to Africa, we must advocate for keeping the money in Africa. There is no point in increasing aid. There's no point in increasing foreign lending if part of it is going to be heading out in the form of private assets. I want to be very specific. What's going out, what's coming in African countries is aid and foreign debt. That is owed by the people of Africa, who are going to be paying that for over the next generations. But what goes out as capital flight is private assets. That belongs to private individuals who are the owners of the money that's being smuggled. So you have basically an imbalance: the private owners of assets and the public who is liable for paying back the debt. Part of it has not been used for financing development. In this book, we find that out of every dollar that comes into the continent, 60 cents on average goes out as capital flight. So the continent keeps only 40 cents. You may say, oh, at least they keep 40 cents. But at the same time, they will pay back the full dollar plus the interest. So the continent is hit twice, servicing debt. Some of it has not benefited from, but at the same time forgoes the development opportunities that would have been financed by external borrowing.
All right, so this book is somewhat of a whistleblower. You're articulating what we've all suspected for all these years. What is the next step?
We actually put figures out in terms of the amount of money that has fled the continent. When we look at 33 sub-Saharan African countries that have good data from 1970 to 2008, we find that from over the 39 years period, about 735 billion in real terms, in 2008 dollars, have fled the continent. If you consider that money could have been invested and therefore impute an interest rate which is very moderate, we use the US Treasury bill, the stock of capital flight amounts to 944 billion. That's almost the size of the sub-Saharan African economy as a whole.
Professor, what is the most shocking fact in this book?
The most shocking fact in this book is no. Africa is not a net borrower to the rest of the world. It's a net creditor to the rest of the world, in the sense that Africa has been lending to the rest of the world. Who would believe that? These are the facts.